Well, folks, we have a ton of stories to bring you today. Some updates on Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, updates on what the youth in Japan are like their most played Nintendo games and what's getting them more interested in continuing to play Nintendo, and just a lot more other stuff. I got to be honest. And a lot of other stuff. I have to be honest here. There's a bevy of news that I'm really excited for here, but we're actually going to be dropping 2 videos today. This is just video 1. I haven't done a news video in a few days, so I figured, you know what? We need to get you up to date with everything going on in the world of Nintendo, so that's what we're here for. Now, before we dive in, I just want to remind you, we are giving away 2 separate giveaways right now. We have 3 copies of Super Mario Galaxy 1+2 that we will be giving away. To enter, just go down to the link in the pinned comment or the description. We're also giving away 5 copies of Kirby Air Riders. You can also enter for that down in the link in the pinned comment or the description. So I wish everyone luck on that. That's 8 total games we're giving away here over the next couple of months. I'm really excited to give back to the community for as long as I can. And let's go ahead and dive into our first story. Now, look, we already had Dragon Quest III 2D HD. We have Dragon Quest 1+2 2D HD coming out fairly soon. And yes, Dragon Quest VII Remake, or as they're calling it, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, is coming out next year. Now, the big thing people want to know is, yeah, okay, Dragon Quest III being a prequel to 1 and 2, then doing 1 and 2 2D HD, that kind of makes sense. That's the beginning of the IP. But why are we jumping from that to Dragon Quest VII when there's so many other great Dragon Quest games between Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 and 7? You know, like 4, 5, and 6, or why not remake an even newer one than that if you're just going to randomly pull 7 out of a hat? Well, we now have an answer. So this is over at Automation, and it says Dragon Quest VII Remake just happened to get completed first. Series creator Yuji Horii hints at other projects in the making. This is the big thing here. Yeah, they're going to be making more and more Dragon Quest. Let's keep it going here. Following the success of last year's Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake, Square Enix is bringing more classic Dragon Quest entries to modern hardware, with the upcoming Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake and Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. The latter, a full 3D remake, came as a surprise announcement during the recently hosted September 2025 Nintendo Direct. Although any news is good news, the announcement also raised some questions as to why Dragon Quest VII is getting the remake treatment before, I don't know, how about 4, 5, 6, right? As spotted by Otaku Soken, Dragon Quest series creator Yuji Horii answered that question in the latest episode of the Koso Koso Hoso Kyoko, a talk show hosted by Horii and former Shonen Jump editor Kazuhiko Torishima. Around the 44-minute mark in the stream, Torishima asked Horii why Dragon Quest VII is getting a remake now instead of, I don't know, Dragon Quest 4, Dragon Quest 5, and Dragon Quest 6. In response, Horii comments, "There are various projects in motion. It's just that Dragon Quest VII happened to get completed first." Torishima takes this as a subtle confirmation of other remakes, asking, "So, it's not that you're not working on 4, 5, and 6, right?" However, Horii keeps things mysterious, refusing to go into further details. So again, not willing to confirm that 4, 5, and 6 are coming, but then again, his exact words are, there are various projects in motion, and it just happened that 7 got completed first. So it sure seems to me as if he's essentially saying, as the other co-host took it as, those games are coming, but because they're not announced, he's being very coy. He's not going to officially confirm it, but it sure seems as if that is the case. Now, in the modern day of gaming, we have to talk about something that's not fun, and that includes game pricing. Game pricing has been rather controversial this year, not just with Nintendo, but Nintendo has been the focus with Switch 2. Well, one game that really excited a lot of people coming to Switch 2 next year is Resident Evil Requiem, but might also excite you, or maybe make you get worried. It kind of depends how you take this news. It appears Resident Evil Requiem will be cheaper on Switch 2 than the other versions. So Resident Evil Requiem's physical Switch 2 release appears to be £10 cheaper than the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X versions. So Capcom announced a surprise reveal during the most recent Nintendo Direct, announcing Resident Evil Requiem, which will launch on Nintendo Switch 2 on February 27th, 2026, day and date with other versions. Following that news, it now seems there's a chance Switch 2 players will be able to enjoy the latest adventure at a cheaper price compared to the competition. According to listings on Amazon UK, Resident Evil Requiem will be priced at £60 on Switch 2, and while we don't know 100% for a fact at this time, it's very likely the physical Switch 2 version of the game will be a game key card versus the full game on a standard game card. That said, it's worth noting that Requiem is on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. It's listed at £70, so that's £10 cheaper. Whether Capcom is throwing Nintendo fans a bone due to the use of the game keycard, or the game is simply cheaper on Switch 2, a lower price is a lower price no matter how you slice it. So, yeah, that is interesting to me. I'm not really sure what the decision is, and this isn't the first time we've seen a game come to Switch 2 and be a little bit cheaper than other versions. And when that happens, you always got to wonder, is it because there's something wrong with the game? Do they think the game is magically just worth less because it's lower resolution and lower frame rate? Like, does half the frame rate mean you lower the price? I don't really know what goes into these decisions. I'm not going to complain, of course, to have games be cheaper on Switch 2. And maybe it's just as simple as they know there's not as big of an install base on Switch 2 at the time this game comes out. So to encourage that more of that install base picks up the game on Switch 2, maybe we charge a little bit less. It could just be as simple as that, and we're just overthinking this whole process. So yeah, obviously we need to get official price confirmations for every country, but right now it does appear that Capcom is going to be charging less for Requiem on Switch 2, and that's a positive. There's nothing really negative about it unless you're on the other platforms, and then you're like, well, if they're getting it for 10 pounds less, why can't we just get all versions for 10 pounds less? Yeah, that's a fair question. One that you're going to have to ask Capcom about. What you're not going to have to ask about, though, is this thing from Bandai Namco. I got to play this game called Pac-Man World 2 Re-Pac, a remake of an old Pac-Man game, and it was fantastic when I played it out at PAX West. Well, we have some details on it that I think are going to make people very happy about how this game runs on both Switch 2 and Switch. So, Pac-Man World 2 Re-Pac resolution and frame rate detailed for Switch and Switch 2. Let's just go right to the details. So the resolution and frame rate on Switch 2. In TV mode, you can get 4K. In handheld mode, you can get 1080p. Now, this is with quality mode turned on. You get a maximum of 30 FPS. Maximum, I don't like hearing that word. Sounds like it might not be a stable 30 FPS. But you get the highest quality visuals, right? Resolution and frame rate, so this is like frame rate priority. Handheld mode is still 1080p, so I kind of think you should just run this mode regardless. TV mode then also knocks itself down to 1080p, and it does 60 FPS. Now, a little disappointed they couldn't go with like 1440p in TV mode and 60 FPS, but hey, I'm happy that there's a 60 FPS option. I'm not going to be mad about options existing because they could have just gave us the 4K 30, the 1080p 30, or maximum 30, which seems like not a locked frame rate, whereas just plain old 60 FPS feels like a locked frame rate. Now, on Switch, the resolution and frame rate for quality in TV mode, you get 1080p, and then handheld mode, you get 720p, which is the max you can go in handheld anyways, gets you 30 FPS. This is what's weird, though. Resolution and frame rate priority. So for frame rate priority on the Nintendo Switch, when you're in TV mode, you get 1440 by 810p, so a little bit above 720p. And then in handheld mode, you get 1024 by 576 and get 30 FPS. So instead of a maximum of 30, you get 30. So basically, it locks the frame rate at 30 FPS. Clearly, you should play this on Switch 2. I'm just saying, it's very obvious to me the Switch 2 version is the way to go. I don't think, look, I guess if you want to do 4K 30, fine, but like 60 FPS in handheld mode, it is a must for games like this, in my opinion. After all, Nintendo put Mario Odyssey at 60. I think 3D platformers really benefit from 60 FPS. And this goes just over a kind of recap of the game itself. Again, I got to go hands-on with it. It was fantastic. I didn't get to play the Switch 2 version, though, so I can't confirm how well or unwell that one works. But what we can talk about is Nintendo Music. Nintendo did something last night, as they seem to do every time I'm live streaming, and they dropped some news. Normally it's an NSO game drop or a Nintendo Music drop. In this case, it was Nintendo Music. So music from the Entertainment System, the Nintendo Entertainment System, and the Famicom disc versions of Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link are now available on the Music app. And it is notable that it is the NES and the Famicom disc version because, look, there is a difference in tracks. There's 20 tracks and 19 tracks, but the same run length. And it is notable that certain versions of the Zelda 2 music on the Famicom disc system are a little different than the ones on the NES one, and in my opinion, a little bit better. Now, I grew up with the tracks for Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, the one on the Nintendo Entertainment System. So to me, that's the one that I'm most nostalgic for, are the tracks there. But the slight differences in tracks on the Famicom disc version are better. So yeah, we have them both, so you don't really have to pick or choose. They're just there. You can have them all. Zelda 2 is my third favorite Zelda game of all time. So there's that. No, I'm not going to debate it. That is what it is. You don't have to believe me. I've been saying it for years. We're going to move on because this next story is actually really fascinating. How about talking about how Nintendo's resonating with the youth. After all, there is this concern that people like me will eventually die, and if Nintendo doesn't get new fans, Nintendo will go away. And I think that's pretty much true for any product. If you only appeal to people of a certain demographic and the people coming up that are going to join that demographic don't like your product, then yeah, it eventually has a shelf life of how long you can stay relevant. Well, Japanese elementary school survey shows popularity of Nintendo's franchises. Very, very interesting here. So, ever wonder what kids around the world are playing? The game at Game Trainers does, which is why they set out to find an answer for elementary school scene in Japan. And they came back with some very good news for Nintendo. Game Trainers set out in August 2025 to see just what kids in Japan are playing. They came back with some very interesting info. 324 elementary school students were surveyed, 50 first graders, 45 second graders, 59 third graders, 57 fourth graders, and 54 fifth graders with 59 sixth graders. I would say they probably went to one elementary school because some elementary schools can be quite small. And they were asked what games they're playing the most right now. Here are the results. 28.4% said Minecraft, 16.9% said Splatoon, Animal Crossing was at 12%, Mario Kart at 9.3%, Pokemon at 8%, Fortnite at 6.8%, Smash Bros at 5.6%, and all other games were less than 2%. The survey clearly shows Nintendo franchises are huge with kids, and the data actually reveals an increase for multiple brands over the 2024 study. Mario Kart has risen, as has Splatoon, Animal Crossing, Pokemon, and Smash Bros. Well, Mario Kart is mentioned. Poor Mario doesn't get a nod at all for his solo adventures. The guy deserves better for the 40th anniversary. And someone down in the comments here notes what some of the rest of them were. So Roblox at 1.5%, Suika Game at 1.2%, The Legend of Zelda at 1.2%, Donkey Kong, it doesn't say series, so I don't really know, about 1.2%. Kirby Series is at 0.9%. Momotaro Dentetsu, that's at 0.9%. And then they're all 19 other titles. There's 19 more that make up the last 5.9%. Obviously, those are all under 1%. So I find this to be really interesting. And this was originally in response because, Kirby, in the original article, Kirby was like not included. And he wanted to note that no, Kirby is actually played. It did hit on almost 1%. So yeah, pretty interesting. Obviously, the big caveat here is this is just one country, and it's the country where Nintendo is the most popular. I'd be very curious if someone were to poll even a single elementary school here in the United States and kind of see what games they're playing. I got a heavy guess that it's probably a lot of Fortnite, a lot of Roblox, and a lot of Minecraft is like the top three. But I'd be very curious to see if there's any Nintendo IP that tend to sneak in there. Is Mario Kart going to sneak in there? Is one of the most popular games in the US, is that going to sneak into a top 10? I'd just like to see what kids are playing. I know what my kids play, but that's not a representative of like a larger group. So I would like to see this study repeated in other countries, not just the United States even. How about the UK? How about Canada? How about Brazil and everywhere else? I just like to see a grander focus here, but I'm not surprised that the youth in Japan, yeah, they like Nintendo. No surprise there. All right, we got to get to our next story. And this was an interesting one because it's an update on a rumor that we've had for a little bit, but we just haven't heard anything. And some people were confused over the last Direct. Now, we had heard in the past from reliable sources like Nate the Hate that Red Dead Redemption 2 is coming to Nintendo Switch 2, but it didn't appear in the Direct, which made people think maybe that rumor isn't true. Well, here's the thing. Kiwi Talks, who has interviewed hundreds of game developers, is here to say, no, it's coming. Don't you worry about it. So I've seen this question pop up. Why wasn't Red Dead Redemption 2 in the Nintendo Direct? Well, Rockstar and Nintendo's relationship is the classic unstoppable force meets immovable object. Both companies are highly secretive, obsessive about quality, control freaks, hate mods, take legal action unnecessarily, and don't like playing second fiddle to anyone else. Pretty much describes both companies in a nutshell. Anyways, Rockstar was never going to announce Red Dead Redemption 2 in a Nintendo Direct. Why? Because they don't need to. Why would Rockstar pay to have their game announced in a Direct when they can do it on their own terms and not have to deal with Nintendo's strict demands? Rockstar didn't announce LA Noire or Red Dead Redemption 1 in a Direct. People kind of forget that stuff wasn't in a Direct. And it'll be the same with Red Dead Redemption 2. Rockstar will announce it out of the blue, just like with previous games on Switch. This will be hard for Nintendo fans to accept, but Nintendo needs Rockstar way more than Rockstar needs them. I actually do agree with that sentiment. Rockstar is massively successful without Nintendo, but Rockstar could be a big boost for Nintendo Switch 2 if it was there. Red Dead Redemption 2 is coming. I have literally had 8 devs tell me they worked on it. So just relax. It'll come at some point. Again, might not be this year. Could be sometime next year. But that's kind of the point, is that, hey, he's kind of calming down. You know, both companies work in very similar ways. Both companies think that their shit don't stink, to say nonetheless there. And obviously, Rockstar is just going to announce it on their own terms at their own time, as they did with LA Noire and as they did with Red Dead Redemption 1. So take that for what it is. I'm not really too surprised. I think almost should be expected at this point. But sometimes it is a little shocking when you hear stuff like that, because you're like, man, really? Why would they take advantage of getting in front of the Nintendo audience? Well, because they don't think they need to. Because frankly, they don't need Nintendo. But they do think they can get some sales there, which is why they're bringing it over. Now, this next update is about Donkey Kong Bonanza. And it's really interesting because Donkey Kong Bonanza obviously recently had DLC. DLC reception was kind of tepid. Some people don't think it's worth it. I've seen a lot of people out there talking about how, hey, man, this game doesn't even add a new boss fight. Actually, there is a secret new boss fight in the DLC. But I'm not going to tell you how to get it. Figure it out on your own or Google it, whatever. But here's a post by Stealth coming from Famitsu. So 3D Mario team producer Kenta Motokoru says they wanted Donkey Kong Bonanza to be different. The entire team was able to aim for something new and different from previous 3D Mario and Donkey Kong games. And we can say that we have actually achieved that goal. Now I hope the customers enjoy it. And I think that's important and part of Nintendo's design philosophy. While this is the team behind Mario Odyssey, and you could definitely see some of that Mario Odyssey influence throughout the game, and certainly some of the designs and the UI elements, I will say that it definitely is not Mario Odyssey. It plays nothing like Mario Odyssey, and it's honestly its own incredible, unique adventure. It is a game unlike Nintendo has ever made before, but yet totally feels like a Nintendo game. Does that make sense? Like, they've never made anything like this, but also it totally feels like something Nintendo would make. So very pleased with Donkey Kong Bonanza. It's likely going to be up for Game of the Year, and I am just really, really excited about that prospect. But you know what's not exciting? The state of the game industry, especially when it comes to the price of systems. I just want to kind of end this video with a point that I saw Sumbro making today, and I think Sumbro Nation's onto something. And I just, you know, there's people that are waiting to pick up a Switch 2. They want to wait for the games to be available that they really want to play, which I totally understand. I'm going to be honest. I've been telling people this whole time, don't buy a Switch 2 until the games are out to justify the purchase. But here's the problem with me telling that today. That's assuming the price is never going to change. And unfortunately, we have a lot of evidence to suggest that when we get to 2026, the price of the Switch 2 might be going up $50 or more. And that is going to suck if that happens. I've been arguing Nintendo should hold, and it would be very beneficial to them long haul to hold. But bottom line is there's some weird things going on in the economy, and maybe you shouldn't wait, especially if the games you want are ones that you can guarantee are going to happen. Like if you want 3D Mario, 3D Zelda, that's going to happen on this system, right? If you want a Animal Crossing, we're going to get a new Animal Crossing. If you just want Gen 10 Pokemon to justify your purchase, that is going to come. So it's one of those things, like if it's one of those guaranteed games you're waiting for and you just know it's going to release, then yeah, maybe you should pick up a Switch 2 right now. And we're going to explain why in a moment. Or if you're waiting for something like Star Fox, something that's kind of iffy, yeah, okay, maybe you should still hold off. But I'm telling you right now that there might be a reason to get Switch 2 in, at least before the end of this year. First off, Microsoft raised their prices again. I've gone over this already before, but I just want to show it. You know, the Xbox Series S512 is now up to $400. The Series S 1 terabyte is now at $450, which is the same price as the Switch 2. The Xbox Series X Digital's at $600. The Xbox Series X, just the standard one that launched at $500, is now $650. And then the Xbox Series X 2 terabyte Galaxy Black is now $800. And this is just all evidence that suggests that you really, really should be thinking about this, because all companies are raising their prices. Obviously, PlayStation 5 raised their prices as well back in August. PlayStation 5, the base model is now $550. The digital edition is now $500, and the 5 Pro is now $750. That's right. That officially means that Nintendo Switch 2 is the second cheapest system, because you can technically get a 512 Series S for $400. But it's cheaper than anything from PlayStation. So that's already a thing. In fact, the Switch 2 is looking like a great value compared to pretty much its predecessor. Over here, you're going to see quickly that Nintendo Switch went up in prices. And yeah, Nintendo announced these prices with the Switch OLED hitting $400, the non-OLED hitting $340, and the Switch Lite hitting $230, which only made Switch 2 feel like a better value because the prices didn't go up there. So, yeah, I think it's a great time to dive in. I think there's a lot of good games coming this holiday. If you're, Age of Imprisonment and Kirby Air Riders is coming up there. Pokemon Legends EA. Obviously, Galaxy 1 and 2 are in 4K on this system. So if you are already going to buy that game anyways for Switch, hey, it's going to look and play even better on Switch 2, which is kind of the story of a lot of Switch 1 games. Look, if you're already an NSO subscriber, like the top tier NSO subscription, when you come over and have Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, they're automatically going to be 1440p, 60 FPS. So I'm just saying that like this is the way it should be. I mean, Bayonetta 3 also actually runs at a lock 60 FPS on Switch 2. So yeah, I think that you seriously got to consider it. If you're someone who knows I will be buying a Switch 2 when 3D Mario comes, when 3D Zelda, I will be buying a Switch 2 when blank arrives. Well, here's the thing. There is just a very high chance the prices will go up. I'm not promising they'll go up. I'm not guaranteeing they'll go up, but the prices are probably going to go up. And if they don't, that's actually really good. But I don't think you're going to feel a lot of buyer's remorse if you buy now because you were worried about it going up and then it doesn't. So it just might be the right time to dive in before the Switch 2 gets hit as well, because every other system, including the Switch 1, has been hit. So it only feels like Switch 2 will probably be hit. And if you think the tariffs were already factored into the Switch 2 price, Doug Bowser's already publicly said the tariffs were never factored into the price. They actually paused pre-orders for a moment because they were trying to factor it in, and then they held the price point, but then they also announced things like when the Switch 1 prices came out, they said things like, hey, prices are subject to change. That includes for Switch 2. So, yeah. I don't know. I'm just saying that, like, if you're planning to buy one in the next year, maybe try to get one this year. Maybe you try to go get one right now. Might be the time to do it. I'll put some links down in the description to where you can go ahead and just purchase it from your various retail outlets because, it just might be time to dive in before the price goes up. And you know what? If you dive in and the price goes up and you have buyer's remorse, you might be able to sell it for the same price you bought it for, as long as you keep it in excellent condition, because the price goes up, right? If the price goes up, that means you're selling it at basically what GameStop would sell it at for used. So, all right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. I am Nathaniel Robojans from Nintendo Prime, and I'll catch you in the next video.